What's up, dude? How's it going?
Another day in fucking paradise. No, pretty fucking good, honestly. Haven't had a bad day at all. Super excited to kind of reassess all this. We did a dank call-in episode earlier. If anybody wants to check that out, we did a live call-in, kind of discussing a lot of what we're going to talk about today, which is the fact that a lot of people are kind of showing their ass on this whole Joe Rogan issue. Look, Gavin and I have never bit our tongue on our criticisms of anybody, but we also are not going to campaign for our detractors to be fucking removed from the internet or removed from fucking discourse, silenced for good. Yeah, I don't think that's a great idea. But before we get ahead of ourselves, of course, it's the beginning of the episode, so we got to shout out our patrons in our Patreon community. You find folks that help us keep coming at you on a daily basis. Keep the electricity on the internet, the things that we have to do this podcast. Yeah, we deeply appreciate you guys. Obviously, everybody that listens, you're all comrades to us, but a special shout out to the patrons.
Yeah, huge shout out to the Patreon community. Thanks so much for the support, guys. And if you want to join our Patreon community, the link for that is in the description of this video, as always, in the description of every stream, every video. But yeah, huge shout out to the patrons. Thanks so much for the support, guys. It really does make the show possible, keeps us coming at you guys almost daily basis. And thanks everyone for tuning in today. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And it looks like Zach's back. What's up, dude?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're super happy to be back on the mic today, the first day of February. A bit of a rainy day here in Kansas City. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in for the podcast today. Really excited to get into these topics. Yeah, the Joe Rogan thing is truly exploded beyond the point that I probably ever would have expected. It's crazy how controversial Joe Rogan is these days. It seems like every time he does a podcast, it ignites a controversy, even if not a national, news grabbing one, at least something on the left, people are talking, people on the right, even. The guy's just controversial all around, which is kind of funny considering just how sort of affable he is and easily convinced and all that stuff. But I'm excited to get into this recent round of debate, and especially to check out Sam Seder over from the Majority Report, who went on MSNBC to make his point about Joe Rogan. So we can get into all that and more in a second. Does look like we have a couple super chats. Thank you, Andrew Matthews. Notice how Kyle lately speaks fast like Ben Shapiro. Have you noticed an increase in his speed? Maybe you just listen to him at the an upper speed on YouTube. Sometimes I do that.
Yeah, I know he's been hitting the vape a lot. I've noticed that there's always a different vape. See, Amal pointed out he had a long 2-1. Pay too much attention. I'm just kidding. It's not the nicotine. He's just an energetic guy. I think likes doing the show, and I feel like he's always kind of talked rather quickly. But I talk really quickly, so I'll pot calling the kettle black if I were to talk shit about that.
Yeah, for sure. But thanks so much for the super chat, Andrew. And to move on, also thank you, Sean, for the $4.99. Excited for another episode of the Vanguard. Love you, fellas. Thank you, Sean. Love you too. Zach, always looking like a snack as always. Shout out to my friends Nikki and Steve. Shout out to you, Sean. Shout out to Nikki and Steve as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys.
Van gang.
And Joseph McDermott with $2. Save Whoopi. She's a Holocaust denier, just dumb. Have you seen this Whoopi Goldberg clip that's been making the round, Zach?
I don't fucking care enough about Whoopi Goldberg to even come to her defense. I'm sorry. She is fucking burned she doesn't deserve it. I liked Sister Act when I was a kid. My mom loves that movie. So it's weird when I started like having to politically react to The View, because in my brain I was like, oh yeah, Whoopi, she's the nun that sings and also is in a couple episodes of Elmo that I remember from when I was a kid. This is a great woman.
Yeah, I haven't done a deep dive on the new Whoopi controversy, but I know she was talking about like how the Nazis only killed white people or something.
Yeah, I did read this controversy actually. My bad. She said that what she said is that it wasn't about racism. It was about like a lack of humanity amongst man. And then the guest got really pissed off and said it was about racism and a lack of humanity against man. I'm pretty sure that was what the exchange was.
Interesting. Either way, pretty funny stuff. Thank you, Ebel 1911. Hey, love the show. Can someone explain what a tanky is? I'm not super well versed in YouTube lefty lingo. So basically, from my experience, when people call someone a tanky, they're basically referring to someone who like sympathizes with China or communist or socialist states around the globe. such as China, such as Cuba, etc. That's what I would describe it as. You have a different definition, Zach?
I mean, just to add to that definition, it's typically used by very online debate me bro types of people who need a quick excuse to overshadow their bastardized foreign policy take that's just simping for America. So like every single person in the world that disagrees with Vosh is a tanky unless they're disagreeing with him from the right. So Aaron Mate is a tanky. We're tankies. Jimmy Dore is a tanky. Anybody who does it, Kyle Kulinski and Hassan Piker were on their tanky bullshit the other day when they were saying that, hey, maybe it's not a good idea if we help Ukraine and encourage them to go to war with Russia and then also go to war with Russia ourselves. Maybe that's not a bad idea. So to some people, that makes you a tanky. To me, the fucking tanky definition that I rock with as the people that only refer to it as like, what is it? Like the People's Republic of Korea. Like there are no human rights abuses anywhere. It's all a State Department lie. I'm like, okay, guy, maybe you're right, but I don't think so. That would be a tanky to me.
Yeah, for sure. It gets thrown around a lot, though, for sure. It gets erroneously thrown around quite a bit these days. But thanks for the super chat, man. Really appreciate that. And yeah, there's a lot of lefty discourse that sometimes we even partake in without ever explaining. I know if you're just tuning in, you're like, what the hell are these people talking about? Like this fucking foreign language shit. But thank you, Will, for the $5. I don't know which one you're talking about.
Both. Yeah, it was just to add on to what you were just saying, though. It's always funny when people who we meet, like Evan and I, we live in Kansas City, so many people that we talk to don't give a shit about progressive politics, and like, we'll maybe like, dog with, get in their ear a little bit, but when they ask us, like when we're just meeting new people, oh, what do you do for a living, and they check out the podcast, they're like, I had no idea what you guys were fucking talking about. Yeah, we sometimes we get in the weeds, and it's important to remember that sometimes our rhetoric is a little bit online. Whoopi is correct, because there were many Jews who were affiliated with the Nazi Party, and I don't know if that's true. I haven't read any history on that. Donald grabbed them by the pussy. I don't know of that happening at all. But thank you for that $5.
Isn't it? I have heard that like even Hitler himself, wasn't he like partially Jewish or something? Like Tess later revealed that he was like partially Jewish in ancestry or something like that.
I mean, maybe that's true, but I don't know how many Jews were just considered honorary Aryans and not fucking like put to death in the Holocaust. Like I don't know
about that. I was just talking about. I thought I heard something along those lines, which is I don't know, maybe what Donald was referring to, but who knows? Anyway, thanks for the super chat, man. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate all the super chats, guys. Starting off the stream strong today. But we got some great news to cover. Do you want to start with this Joe Rogan stuff, Zach, or maybe the other stuff?
No, let's start with the JRE. That's what everybody's here for. Let's just go ahead and get into it. And fucking man, it's just another. This was just. I've been calling debating Sam Seder a lot like playing wiffle ball, and they like this is just a perfect example of why that is. The ball is perfectly set up on the tee for him. All he has to do is swing. Be like, I disagree with Joe Rogan, but I also talk shit for a living, and fuck if I'm able to tell anybody what they're supposed to. Of course, that's not the approach Sam Seder took. Instead, he came and offered his opinion on why Joe Rogan should be censored, and calls him in over his head, compares him to freaking Rush Limbaugh, which even Ryan Grimm kind of low-key calls him out for. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, so much happening that Sam Seder, of course, he just can't help himself but shove himself in the conversation. But I think it's hilarious that he got credited as MSNBC guest because he's not a big enough name to just be his own fucking name.
Yeah, so Sam Seder of the Majority Report did appear on MSNBC earlier today to discuss the Spotify Joe Rogan controversy, and actually called for his censorship. And we'll get into that clip in a second. Before we do, though, I did want to remind everyone what happened to Sam Seder himself not all that long ago. Oh, wow. What was that? MSNBC gives into disingenuous right-wing smear, fires Sam Seder. They fired him over old tweets. This happened in 2017. He was eventually reinstated and, of course, has his Peacock show now. But it's still pretty ironic, and I think worth pointing out that Sam Seder's on a network advocating for censorship, the same network that effectively censored him too. Pretty funny stuff if you ask me. But let's give
It's like
him.
when Nathan Robinson tries to chastise other fucking places for being anti-worker when his staff tried to turn into a co-op and then he tried to fire all of them. Whoops. Or speaking of Nathan Robinson, when he tried to say that cancel culture didn't exist and then he got fired from the fucking Guardian because he wanted to write articles that they deemed pro-Palestinian and called anti-Semitic. So yeah. Anyway, a lot of that going around on left discourse, I have to say.
I just think it's genuinely insane going on a network that literally censored you to advocate for the censorship of another person, especially when that person, as one of our commenters in the chat pointed out, defended him at that point in time and called that ridiculous and, said it was ridiculous to fire someone for some old tweets that were obviously jokes. But again, with all that said, let's give Sam a chance to explain himself. Let's hear him out, at least in this 1 minute clip that was posted on Twitter by Sally Hunt. So let's take a look here. And yeah, as it says here, MSNBC guest, not contributor, but guest. So yeah, let's check this out, guys.
You're talking to 11 million people every time you do a podcast. You have a responsibility. And if you're the company that's paying for it, it's on you. And he gets a Spotify paycheck. And so it's on them. It's part of their brand now that they are the ones who are publishing this stuff. They are profiting off it, and it is hurting people. And it's their responsibility, and it's their brand.
And the other thing about it too is like you can just talk about stuff that doesn't matter that much. You know what I mean? Like that's the other thing. You can just choose to like talk about comedy or talk about like
he's in over his head.
Right.
On some
that's
level.
the thing.
And that's the bottom line. He's in over his head. He doesn't realize it. He's making too much money for them to tell him. And that's the bottom line. I mean, today he tweeted out, sort of gloriously, this AP story about ivermectin in a study from Japan. Well, 20 minutes later, the AP corrected its headline, and you never heard from him again about it. And so, this is a problem. You're talking to 11 million people.
But he's not advocating for censorship, guys. None of these people are advocating for censorship. It's not censorship that they're advocating for. That's what blows my mind. Like, at least be honest. Like, at least come out here and say, like, we don't want him on air. We want to silence this guy.
Yeah, and this especially concerns me as a leftist because look where the energy in the country, the electorate is clearly drifting right now towards the right. Everyone knows it. Joe Biden is an ineffective president. The current showing for the left in electoral politics has been absolutely pathetic to say the least. And the right wing is currently the prevalent ideology. For people to tune in to MSNBC, which is perceived as the left network, and hear these talking points now on a mainstream, regular basis coming from the likes of Mr. Sam Seder, it gives the left a terrible look. It's a terrible look. It gives us a terrible name. And yes, slowly but surely, it is the Democratic Party and people like Sam Seder who sympathize with the Democratic Party that are becoming the cheerleaders of censorship. I think that's just undeniable at this point, which again is not a good thing. That's not something I'm happy about or proud of. I'm very uncomfortable with the left embracing censorship. I think the left should return to the former days of being against censorship at all costs. It should be one of the core tenets and values that we embrace as a left. And slowly but surely, I'm seeing that fall away. This needs to be a rallying cry of the newer generation of leftists to re-embrace free speech and to stand up to the censorship of viewpoints that maybe aren't in the mainstream. And this is coming from someone that is pro-vaccine. This is someone that is boosted, double vaccinated and boosted, proudly so. I took the shot without reservation, but never did it occur to me that maybe this should be cause for censorship, that maybe, this should be the excuse to start kicking people off of their platforms, to deplatform people, and draw these arbitrary lines as to where and what we cannot speak about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird things where we were just arguing like maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whether or not the right was more censorious or the left was more censorious. And when we say that, we're obviously talking in broad terms, like fucking Republicans and Democrats. But unfortunately, when you see somebody that's like Peacock, MSNBC, like, that is who they think the left is, unfortunately, because unless independent media has been able to reach them. And then we try and, convey to people that, individuals with our politics are the real left. But Gavin and I, we have like 20 fucking some odd thousand subscribers. That's not that many people that we can reach. So unfortunately, people like Sam Seder with 1 million fucking subscribers, they reach a lot more people than us. They get to set the Discord, and it fucks us badly when they do such a shit job of it. Pretend like they're just like the corporate overseers, the oligarchs that they like sometimes choose to chastise and sometimes choose to celebrate, and pretend they're the only responsible, reasonable, intelligent people in the room, right? The adults are talking, guys. Shut the fuck up and don't listen to Joe Rogan. What are you, some like depraved lunatic? He like compares him to fucking Rush Limbaugh, one of the most depraved, odious sons of bitches in human history, right? I mean, the dude was just fucking hatred and Oxycontin, right? That was all he was. And he just pumped out this babble that only people like my fucking grandfather listen to. Actually, a lot of fucking people listen to Rush Limbaugh. That was the problem. But yeah, it's totally crazy. And it's not like, this is a radical position to take. It's actually just the authentic, true left position. And that's why I was so relieved and honestly just like happy that I could use this to fortify my argument the way I'm going to right now. When I saw Ryan Grimm unabashedly going to bat for Rogan, saying that the left was fucking this up, like we've had our fucking battles with Ryan Grimm. I've broken his balls like 1 million times on air for shit that he's done that I disagree with. But he's right on the money here. And also, I think his presence on Rising has really warmed to me. I think he does a good job a lot of the time. And so I just want to play this little snippet right here because this is Ryan Grimm way too politely. If it was me, it would have been nasty as hell. Calling out fucking Sam Seder for screwing the left and just being a general dunce. So let's go ahead and play this. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear. I hope you will. Turn on the closed captions just in case. Let's rock and roll.
So I recently saw some left-wing people making the argument that Rogan is now
some left-wing people like Sam Seder,
the contemporary equivalent of Rush Limbaugh. It's hard to describe just how wrong that is. Rush,
that's a good way to describe Sam Seder. It's hard to describe just how wrong he is anyway.
Was an explicitly political operative, somebody deeply invested in changing American political culture, and also somebody who didn't really have many guests on. Rogan is an MMA guy and a comedian who kind of stumbled backwards into his popularity. This description is not misinformation.
I don't know what else I can do differently other than maybe try harder to get people with differing opinions on right afterwards. I do think that that's important, and do my best to make sure that I've researched these topics, the controversial ones in particular, and have all the pertinent facts at hand before I discuss them. Again, I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial.
That's more than Rachel Maddow can say, right? That's all I'll play for now, unless you guys want to see more. But I just wanted to play a little bit of this because as we were talking about on call-in, nobody in media has this level of vulnerable introspection. The immediate response from people who are usually criticized in the media at volume like this is to stick their middle fingers at everybody. I know that impulse, right? When you're getting shit thrown at you from all angles, like that is the response. You're like, fuck everybody, me versus the world. But he didn't fucking do that. And so the villainous way that they're trying to portray him just doesn't work. Right, with regular people who aren't just like wrapped up in the superficial neoliberal discourse, the regular fucking people like us, like even when I don't agree with Joe Rogan, even when I think he's full of shit, like when he's telling us we can't have paternity leave, or back before he got sold on UBI, he would talk about how like people would be masturbating in the streets if they didn't have jobs, like all kinds of crazy shit. Like I'm feel free to disagree with the guy whenever I think he's on crazy pills, but at the end of the day, you have to be like, this is an affable, thoughtful guy. And even though his conclusions are so different than the ones that I would draw, I don't think it's unfair to call him thoughtful. He was doing real introspection there in the air. Rachel Maddow has spread massive levels of misinformation, harmful fucking misinformation about all kinds of things. Just look at our escalating tensions with Russia over Ukraine, all that being said. And yeah, Gavin pulling up this tweet. Exactly. Oh, did you want to read it, or I'll read it?
Sorry, dude, I muted myself at the last second. But yeah, Miss Marion Williamson points out something that was very insightful, very true. She says, just to be clear, at least 15 years of U.S. military presence in Afghanistan was based on misinformation, quote unquote, coming from the highest levels of our government and media, I would add. Thousands of Americans, at least hundreds of thousands of Americans, at least hundreds of thousands of Afghans died because of it. No bigger misinformer than the Pentagon, nor the media, which printed their lies and sold us on this invasion, amping up tensions after 9/11. But yeah, let's go back to this Sam Seder clip real quick, because I just want to listen to it one more time and really think about the implications of what he's saying. It's pretty short, so let's just take a listen one more time.
You're talking to 11 million people every time you do a podcast. You have a responsibility, and if you're the company that's paying for it, it's on you. And he gets a Spotify paycheck, and so it's on them. It's part of their brand now that they are the ones.
All right, so this is just so dumb for so many fucking reasons. First of all, obviously he's on MSNBC saying this. Are they not responsible for all the disinformation that they've spread over the years, specifically in the last, 4 to 6 years about Russiagate, but obviously going back to the days of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, when they literally fired people like Jesse Ventura because they were anti-war and helped manufacture consent for those invasions. So, to say this on MSNBC is just ridiculously hypocritical, obviously, and to be on the payroll of MSNBC, let's be clear. But also, doesn't Sam Seder cast to YouTube? Doesn't Sam Seder cast to, other platforms too that also host right-wingers? Is his implication here just that every media platform has an obligation to purge anyone that's saying things that he disagrees with, at least when it comes to this subject matter? Where do you draw the line there exactly? Is it just Joe Rogan that should go, or is it literally every single person that's talking about this in a way that's not pre-approved by the media? And Rogan was correct in his video when he pointed out that, certain things about COVID and about masks, for example, or even the vaccine were once flagged as misinformation and now are accepted as truth. This is simply factual. So by Sam's logic, should Spotify, should YouTube have kicked off people that were talking about that stuff before it was proven as true? Do those people then get their accounts back? We're talking about people's livelihood here. People like Zach and I who do this for a living. And yeah, sometimes we're in the process of figuring things out. That's how things are figured out, through a robust debate, through an online, commentariat these days, which is discussing these issues. It has to get worked out somehow. And some things are proven to be false. Some things are proven to be true. But you can't just ban everyone in the process before things are ironclad or, for sure.
Oh, 100%. And if you want to play the game where you're talking about people are losing their lives because they're not taking the vaccine, how many people lost their lives because we got into Iraq, guys? How many fucking people lost their lives because you think you would have the principled stance to not go on that broadcast corporation? Because as you said, Sam, the media conglomerate that pushed all those narratives is responsible. Who signed their checks, Sam, while everybody was out here on MSNBC talking about how we had to defend freedom, fuck the Dixie Chicks? You remember? Come on. You're way older than me. You got to remember, because I fucking remember, right? I remember that time when even people who were supposedly Democrats, like John Kerry, wanted us to go in there and just fucking carpet bomb the Middle East because they have no conscience and they're savages. That was real, and that was getting fucking paraded and celebrated on MSNBC, and you were an anti-American and a radical and a lunatic. Okay? If you didn't want our president to protect our country, of course. Okay. Where are they paying the price for that? Okay. Joe Rogan said some shit that you disagree with about vaccine in a country where they have had the most clusterfuck vaccine rollout, public health involvement. It was never going to be solved by Joe Rogan. You know that. Shame on you for pretending it would have. It's the government's fucking fault. If we had a reasonable, responsible fucking government, we could have avoided this. We would have handled this like fucking reasonable, civilized fuckers. But instead, there was a golden opportunity to profit off of the backs of all these fucking poor people. Again, print trillions of dollars a day for Wall Street, inflate the fucking wealth of the already opulent. I mean, that's exactly what the fuck was happening, right? So let's just not pretend that something else is happening where it's like this evil, fucking toe-shaped podcaster is out here ruining the world because he has some questions about the vaccine. I'm sorry, but you're full of fucking shit, and it's so obvious that you're a liar. I don't even fucking like this guy, but I'm giving like a passionate defense of him because I'm like, I don't see where all this fucking hate is coming from.
Well, it's because you're principled, Zach, and you don't base your opinions on censorship on whether or not you like or agree with the person in question, which I thought was a self-evident thing that the left had come to agree on, that principle to defend the the value of free speech and the First Amendment, even when it comes to arguments we disagree with. And yeah, just as a personal consumer as well, I would hate the precedent that this would set. I have, long looked to the internet as the last vestige of real interesting dialogue going on. You can't turn on the goddamn, television or even the radio necessarily for the most part anymore and hear anything other than establishment talking points, regardless of what the subject matter is. The internet is absolutely the last bastion of true free speech, and less so it's being whittled away. But to do something like kick Joe Rogan off of Spotify would set this precedent in media environment, social media landscape, which is already crushing independent voices, which is already crushing non-mainstream, non-authoritative news source voices. Channels like ours, channels like so many of the people we have on our show, we know what we're talking about. This would only be one, more tile falling in the direction against independent media and for corporate media. And obviously, Joe Rogan's not an independent podcaster anymore. Don't get me wrong. I understand that he's working for a giant corporation now and got paid a hell of a lot of money to do that. So don't get me wrong. But the point is that you can still go there to hear conversations that aren't just, establishment talking points being regurgitated to you. Unfortunately, sometimes he does have on people like, CIA spooks to talk about why we still need to be in Afghanistan. And for those reasons, I don't actually love Joe Rogan. Again, like you said, Zach, neither of us are even particularly huge fans of Joe Rogan. We're still defending him based on our principled value of free speech and upholding it. So, that's what I think is so outrageous here. And again, just before we move on to our next topic, just listen to this opening line from Sam Seder one more time, keeping in mind the fact that he is on MSNBC as he says this. Just bathe in the shocking hypocrisy of this clip.
You're talking to 11 million people every time you do a podcast. You have a responsibility. And if you're the company that's paying for it, it's on you. And he gets a Spotify paycheck. And so it's on them. It's part of their brand now that they are the ones who are publishing this stuff. They are profiting off it. And it is hurting people. And it's their responsibility, and it's their
literally without irony, on MSNBC, which, as I said, manufactured consent for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and every military intervention since, obviously, as well as manufactured consent for this Russiagate conspiracy theory, which escalated tensions with a nuclear superpower, edging us closer to World War III. And also which let the Democrats basically just get off the hook entirely for their faults in the 2016 election, an election which should have triggered major introspection for the party.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. The only thing I'll fucking tack onto that is there's still, to this day, scooping up the fucking trash of Fox News, like, oh, you're gonna have that fucking I can't work with the same place as Tucker after he did this fucking thing. Who cares that I wrote a book connecting like freaking about bin Laden and why we need to fucking go get him and all this kinds of shit and whatnot. Yeah, I can't, that guy's name escapes me, but he's a real person that they just hired. Fuck me, because I can't remember him. But anyway, we'll move on. We do have a couple of super chats that I want to get to. If the act of hand wringing took a human form, that would be Sam Seder. Yep. And Emma Vigilant could be the finger wagger. So there we go.
Yeah, and I was making this point earlier today on our call-in episode. If you guys aren't aware, we're also on the call-in podcast audio platform, which is currently only available for iPhones. But if you have it, download it and subscribe to us there. It's a really fun time. We got to, call in, chat with people that are listeners, etc. It's a really good time. But I was talking a little bit about this and how the Majority Report, this isn't the first time they've advocated for the censorship. Nomiki Konst was on the Majority Report months ago advocating for the censorship of Joe Rogan before it was even cool to do so. Now it's this big liberal talking point, but over there they've been cheerleading the censorship of Rogan in particular, but of anyone that's repeating these kind of ideas for a while now. Again, this is not the first time. So that's what you're getting over there at the Majority Report, but you guys already know that, obviously. And thank you, Jonathan, for the $5. You're 100% correct. It is really funny to watch people like Sam Seder kind of turn into these like pearl clutching, like parodies of a leftist. It's crazy.
Yep, I was trying to share my screen and unmute, and apparently the fucking stream fucking won't do that. But either way, I was just going to throw this up on screen really quickly. Talk about an insane throwback from the Vanguard, but this is when we initially roasted.
This is something that caught my eye. And this is
so let me just play a little bit. Cringe with the Vanguard really quickly.
No, dude, I don't know if I can watch this.
Joe Rogan has the largest podcast platform in the country. I don't know about the world. He is an important voice that I've run into too many people pre-COVID at bars who cite him for information, and my own family members at gatherings have cited him for information on science. So let's not joke about Joe Rogan, but let's play this clip of Joe Rogan.
All right, we don't have to listen to any more of this fucking self-harm, but she demands Spotify deplatform Joe Rogan. Way to beat him to the punch, no, Miki. It hasn't helped your fucking subscribers or your viewer retention or anything. I mean, think about how fucked up it has to be to get on a fucking show like 3 times a week with 1 million fucking subscribers, and you get your fucking ass kicked by 2 dunces from the Midwest who have never been on any show fucking ever. Okay, I'm just saying, Jesus, no wonder you're advocating for censorship. You gotta clear the lane somehow. You gotta be the only one fucking left on YouTube before somebody wants to click on your fucking video. Jesus Christ. But yeah, you're right. Let's stop talking about this because we have one more big story to get to. Sam is auditioning for the Rachel Maddow show, and a lot of lefties are jealous of Joe's success. He has a very broad audience. Yeah, all those things are true. I don't know if Sam's literally auditioning for the Rachel Maddow show, though I do know that Rachel is taking a hiatus and they're looking for a new fill-in. MSNBC, although I doubt they go in his direction, because from what I heard, they didn't renew the Peacock contract with Majority Reports. I don't know if they were necessarily
really
happy with his draw. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true or not.
Probably because they're getting shit numbers. But yeah, there is an opening at MSNBC now. Rachel Maddow taking a hiatus. They need some new talent. Sam's stepping up to the bat. He's stepping up to the bat, guys. But yeah, thank you so much, Christina, for the $4.99. Really appreciate your comment. Also, thank you, Stephen R., for the $5 coming in clutch. Sam has been trying to make Jimmy toxic for years. That is one of Sam's longtime things. Now he's trying to make Rogan toxic. I mean, yeah, that's definitely true. Sam and Jimmy have had a long running feud, and obviously you guys know Jimmy has been one of the long running targets of Sam Seder. He's always been on his shit list and vice versa. So thanks for that comment in the super chat, Steven. Really appreciate that. And do we have any more super chats before we move on to our next story? Doesn't look like it. Yeah, did you want to intro this one, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I was Gavin. I was like, oh, we should react to this tonight, and I was like, okay, let me watch this clip. And I watched it, and at first I'm like, I thought you were talking about the Tim Dillon video, which I'd already seen, where like Kyle's reacting along to Tim Dillon roasting. He has a pretty funny 45-second rant where he does a Jordan Peterson impression, and Kyle's reacting to that. But this time, he unloads on Jordan Peterson for kind of, being a fraud, being obviously a fraud, something we were calling him out for a while ago. Here at the Vanguard, while Kyle is still, simping for self-help and all that kind of bullshit. He's really into the millennial male live, laugh, love kind of bullshit. It seems like it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. It's like nevertheless he persisted. Like, sign me up, bro. Jocko Willink. I don't care that you're a fucking former Navy SEAL that killed a shit ton of brown people, probably. Yeah, I need to get up at 4:30. But anyway, I digress. I'm not gonna break your balls too hard, Kyle, even though you made it so fucking easy to. And it was so obvious that he had to massively simp to the part of his audience that he got from his appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast when he dared call out Jordan Peterson explicitly. So that was a little cringy, but just a couple notes from me, Kyle, not that you asked for them.
To be honest, I do kind of think that it's a little bit wholesome how he admitted to being into like the self-help shit and the motivational speaking and stuff. Yeah, it's cringy, but I do find it a little bit wholesome that he at least admitted that, rather than just like not. So, it is what it is. But yeah, this is pretty funny. And as you guys know, Jordan Peterson was scheduled to make an appearance on the Crystal Kyle Friends podcast. I think like last week, right? Just last week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago. Anyway, the dude bailed at the last minute. And this was after Crystal Ball read both of his books in preparation for this interview. Can you imagine reading both of Jordan Peterson's books in preparation for an interview that he then bails on? What a waste of your goddamn time. And apparently Kyle listened to like hundreds of hours of his lectures or whatever. So, Jesus Christ, it would have to be like some Clockwork Orange shit with my eyes peeled open for me to subject myself to that willingly. But anyway, the point is now, after he's been stabbed in the back by Jordan, betrayed, and left for the dead, now Kyle is coming back with a vengeance, and he's a little bit on the warpath against Jordan Peterson, again, who is just totally bailed on this conversation they were supposed to have. This is the second video he's made kind of going after him. Again, as you referenced, Zach, he reacted to that Tim Dillon clip, which was pretty funny, to be honest, making fun of Peterson. And now he has this video out called Jordan Peterson Teams Up with Ted Cruz. Let's take a listen here. It's not too long of a video. And at first he talks a bit about this Ted Cruz relationship. But then he gets into the podcast appearance a little bit and how disappointed he is in Peterson and other members of the intellectual dark web who, speak a big game when it comes to debate and talking about, the marketplace of ideas and how people on the left don't engage with, other viewpoints. And then when he gets the opportunity to, he bails. So anyway, we'll let Kyle, speak for himself. Here we go. I thought this was
really
pretty good.
quickly though. We did get a super chat, and I just want to react to this really quickly because I've read both, not Jordan Peterson's, but I've read Chris Ryan's book. Chris Ryan, I don't know if he's like, I've heard so many people call him like a complete quack scientist, but he has this book called Sex at Dawn, which is all about how like people are naturally like polyamorous and non-monogamous. It's really interesting. Me and my girlfriend actually both read it. I mean, it'll fucking like open up your mind and you'll think about some different shit. But again, I don't know. Again, kind of like Jordan Peterson, I don't know how much of it is rooted in like truth and reality. I remember one time actually on the Joe Rogan podcast, he asked this another like very acclaimed anthropologist about Sex at Dawn, and the dude's like, "Oh, that's just not serious." And Joe's like, "Come on, Chris, everybody's hating on your book, man." And the guy's like, "I'm not trying to be a hater, but that's just all conjecture and more,
That's funny, and thanks for the super chat, Matt Ocelot God. I have not read Sex at Dawn nor any of other books by Chris Ryan, but I've heard it's pretty good. I didn't know he was considered like a quack or anything like that. I've heard it's a pretty good book, but
it's a really good book. I'm saying I have no idea how much of it's true or not, because it's like I don't know anything about anthropology. If you this is the history of what I'm okay, but then I've also heard other people be like, well, that's actually quack. I'm not staking my fucking reputation on it. I haven't researched it, but I thought it was a good, interesting book that made me, challenge my ideas.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Anyway, thanks so much for the super chat, man. And without further ado, let's take a look at this video calling out Jordan Peterson.
So Jordan Peterson tweeted something the other day that is hilarious. So he said this. Let me show you. Talked to Senator Ted Cruz's key investors, in parentheses, not donors, yesterday in Fort Worth, suggested that Republicans could offer young people the sustaining meaning of responsibility, among other better stories.
By the way, what does that even mean, investor? I genuinely don't even know what Jordan Peterson's talking about there. I didn't know human beings like senators had investors. What the fuck even is this?
I think he's talking like investors in the PAC. Like it's not donations into the PAC. They're investing in their political future via this PAC because they know that for every $1 they spend on the super PAC, they're going to get like $50 fucking back in taxes.
Just like, what a weird way to phrase that. Anyway, sorry, guys.
And then he tags Ted Cruz. And see, it says there on the left, investor retreat, truth and courage pact. It's hilarious that Ted Cruz calls his PAC the Truth and Courage PAC. Truth and courage. Ted Cruz. This is the guy who colossally cucked himself to Donald Trump after Donald Trump said his dad killed JFK and he wouldn't spill the beans on his wife, basically calling Cruz's wife ugly. And then Cruz was asked by the media, okay, but will you support him if he's the nominee? And Cruz wouldn't answer and said, I'm going to be the nominee. Ted Cruz. And then, of course, after going to the RNC and you work for us, now you better go, after getting obliterated by him in the debates. So there's a number of things to say about this. Nobody is less truthful and less courageous than Ted Cruz. I love how the fact that Peterson says his key investors, not donors. What are you talking about? What's the difference? Key investors? Was he starting some sort of private company? You're investing in the private company. And by the way, you don't think that would affect how he legislates? Of course it would affect how he legislates. By the way, Ted Cruz right now is involved in a case that's working its way through the court system. It may even be going to the Supreme Court. I don't remember what I read about that. I may have read that. But the case is he wants even more money in politics. He wants even more money in politics. So the idea that this, not donors. So in other words, Peterson's trying to be like, look, it's not corrupt. It's not corrupt. Ted Cruz is one of the most corrupt politicians that there is. This is a guy who has openly argued that if a billionaire is donating to a politician, they have free speech rights to do it. So if a billionaire wants to give millions of dollars to a politician, Cruz says there's nothing wrong with that at all. Not only is that not corruption, that's not even the appearance of corruption. That's just First Amendment protected free speech. It most certainly is not free speech. It most certainly is corruption and bribery. So he's one of the most corrupt people there is. So anyway, Peterson trying to cover his ass by saying that is hilarious. Like, no, this is one of the most odious politicians in the country, and you're meeting up with him now. But there's a more important point. The more important point is Peterson's talking to Cruz about we need to teach young people the sustaining meaning of responsibility, among other better stories. So the stories part is, how Jordan Peterson's obsessed with narratives and stories, and you got to look at yourself as the hero in the story and try your best to live honorably and to tell the truth, or at least don't lie, and stand up with your back straight and clean your room and all this stuff. So the narrative thing is classic Jordan Peterson, obsessed with stories. But telling Ted Cruz that you need to sell personal responsibility. Hey, Jordan, that's not the job of a politician. The job of a politician is to legislate on behalf of the people and represent the voters. So, in other words, if the voters say, hey, Ted Cruz, we would like a living wage out here, please. We work full time and don't make enough money to survive. Could you help us out on that? That's Ted Cruz's job. Ted Cruz's job is, hey, man, we have 45,000 people dying every year because they don't have basic health care. Can we get some universal health coverage, please? That's his job. His job is to make laws and legislate the will of the people in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic and a representative democracy. This is just a total category error. And if anything, what politicians do when they stress the personal responsibility angle of stuff is them dodging their own personal responsibility to do their job as a politician properly, to implement laws for the people. So he's
also, even though all this stuff is 100% true, imagine Ted Cruz being the guy you pick to buddy up with. Like, what a lame loser that literally no one really gives a shit about. Like, does anyone actually like Ted Cruz? Chat, let me know if there's actually a significant Ted Cruz fan base out there. But it seems like the majority of even the GOP at this point is pretty over the guy. They find him pretty goddamn unbearable. I mean, I know that the Trump folks just hate him because he's lying Ted. But like, who actually is Ted Cruz's real constituency at this point? It seems like even guys like Dan Crenshaw have a bigger, base than a guy like Ted Cruz. Just such a lame, cringy loser to buddy up with. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about Jordan Peterson and how anti-establishment he actually is. But that's just an aside.
But doesn't I don't know. The one thing I will push back about Ted Cruz and say, even though he is probably the most unlikable politician I've ever seen, like if I was ever, now I'm going to get banned from any fucking press rally, but if I ever had a clean shot at the motherfucker's snout, you know what I mean? I'll punch him right in the fucking, he just looks like he deserves it, right? I don't know. That's my latent barbarism, but I don't know what the fuck to say. I wrote a fucking satire column about it in high school. I don't know what the fuck to do about it. The guy's got a punchable fucking face. That being said, didn't he have like one of the most popular podcasts in the world for a while? I don't know if that was just entirely like corporate inflated, but he was right up there. He had a massively popular podcast for a while. I don't know if he still does. But that there is a constituency of like fucking a lot of people in, rural, middle America, the South, like all these kinds of like, backdoor woodsy, like I'm a man, I need to cut my fucking taxes. I'm not making fun of people, but I'm just saying like, the hillbillies that would be my extended family. I don't know. Those people might fucking be the constituents of Ted Cruz. The last remaining bastion of people who want to like have the old Republican Party exist. I feel like those people flock. So I don't think it's enough to be like a power force, but surely it's enough to at least have like some cultural relevancy and make some money.
True. I still just think it's very revealing that Jordan Peterson is like buddy hanging out with this fucking loser who just really personifies all the worst aspects of like corporate rot in our two-party system. I mean, this guy doesn't have a populist bone in his fucking body, Ted Cruz. Anyway, let's listen to the rest of this video because it does get a little juicier as Kyle goes on to, savage Peterson even more.
Ironically, he would be dodging his own personal responsibility if he just goes out there and lectures people about personal responsibility. Look, guys, don't get it twisted. I have a guilty pleasure. My guilty pleasure is I love the motivational speaking stuff. I do. I love the self-help guru stuff. I love the arguments about
please internalize the
get
failure
your
of
ass out
modern
of bed,
capitalism.
go do the things that you got to do. Here are the reasons why that's a good idea. I like that stuff probably even more than the next guy. Sometimes I like corny and cheesy ass quotes more than the next guy. So I have nothing against that at all. In fact, I think there's this vacuum on the left where nobody gives you that stuff while also making leftist arguments in terms of public policy. Like, I want the left to be sufficient in the art of personal improvement, while also not abandoning the commitment to the community and better public policy. So I support that stuff strongly. What I do not support is corrupt Republican politicians or Democratic politicians lecturing people about personal responsibility.
And just as an interesting conversation, what do you think about that, Zach? Do you agree with what he's saying as far as the left maybe embracing to some extent a more of a, personal improvement kind of discourse? Because I mean, to be fair, just to give him credit, I do think that like one person that would exemplify that is like a Marianne Williamson. I think Breonna Joy Gray actually made that point the last time she interviewed her. She was like, I actually like the fact that you talk about self-improvement and, meditation and that kind of stuff, because it makes you more relatable. It makes you more human, and it makes you appeal to people, just from a public relations standpoint as a left, it makes you appeal to people on another level, another layer that maybe you weren't just by giving them pure policy talk, even though obviously that stuff's more substantive. But do you think he has a point there, or do you think he's full of shit?
No, he's not full of shit. I a lot of what I was doing, guys, I was just making comedy while we were listening to that, but because it was really funny and he opened the door for it. But look, so yes, 100% in one capacity. The left, the right, we cannot allow the right to have a monopoly on self-improvement, right? I think that's a necessity, and that's one of the things that we talk about honestly all the time on our show. Why is a guy like Jordan Peterson super popular? Why is because he fulfills that paternal role that is missing in a lot of men's lives, right? And that causes all kinds of societal problems, and they compound when you've got a crazy nut job like Jordan Peterson giving all those guys advice, right? Or they'll dude, it happens to people that I've seen with progressive values, right? They'll get in there with like, oh, well, we're going to teach you how to get women, or we're going to teach you how to be a real man, and take it. And then they spiral out of control, and then they're sharing and retweeting libertarian shit. And I'm pulling my hair out being like, what happened to you, comrade? Okay. So I worry about that too, because so much of the modern market for self-help, and to be frank, the people that Kyle name drops that he likes are the biggest fucking purveyors of this often, which is what I was pulling my hair out when he was like, oh, I like Jocko Willink. Yo, really? You like the Navy SEAL guy that's made a career telling people to conquer their inner bitch and that fucking discipline equals freedom, and that doesn't sound Orwellian to you? Like, I'm sorry, but this is not for me. And when you talk, so if you're talking about that kind of shit, right? I'm gonna roll my eyes at it. But I think that you're right that Marianne Williamson, and there's a lane for all kinds of people on the left to talk about wellness and health and building up your own life, and in doing so in a way that actually positive, that's not so individualistic, that's all about uplifting your community, all kinds of shit. I was like, I was just working the other day, and I had to listen to this fucker talk about marriage counseling for 3 hours straight, and he was talking about God and all this stuff, and how God wants only the true couples that can withstand all the fighting that they're doing, and on all this kinds of shit, weird bullshit that you're pastor tells you when you're I don't fucking know, but it was one dude who was the religious guy and one woman who was in a terrible marriage, from what I gather, when I was eavesdropping on their conversation. That's the bad kind of self-help, right? That woman, probably she was really young. She probably shouldn't have been married to the asshole that she was married to anyway. The good advice would have been get an attorney, get the fuck out of here, and move the fuck on with your life, not continue to let your husband treat you like shit, and know that Jesus only rewards the couples that persevere, right? So there's bad kinds of a self-help and all that kind of stuff, and that's what the right creates. The problem that happens is the left just doesn't participate in it at all, because we think it's beneath us, and then there's all those people, they have nowhere to go except to those dog shit, oh, you must internalize the failures of capitalism, you must overcome, you must step on,
pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Yeah, 100%. And you're totally correct. And I think that the left should step into that lane, artfully so, and to counter it from a perspective that doesn't just drive home the individualistic capitalist pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of ideology, which you're absolutely right. A lot of the Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson types do lean heavily on, which is why I find their, inspirational or motivational material to be problematic, because I think it, puts all the onus on you as an individual rather than acknowledging that, in a state of poverty or desperation, people aren't able to live up to their potential. People aren't able to get out of bed at 6 a.m. and conquer their inner bitch if they're not happy and have all of their basic minimum necessities met. And that's something that we need to talk about a lot more as a left. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more of this. Not to go off on too big of a tangent here.
As they destroy the country because they represent their donors, they represent billionaires, they represent corporations, as the country burns, as everybody's having a rough go of it at the moment. So this is just simply a category error, man. I mean, the fact that Jordan Peterson doesn't understand that this is not the job of a politician. The job, and by the way, also, nobody likes politicians. Have you seen the numbers? Have you seen how, Congress always has an approval rating between like 7% and 25%? Nobody likes these people. Nobody likes Ted Cruz. I'm sure his numbers are underwater. So in a weird way, even if Ted Cruz took the advice, it would almost like besmirch the message itself. Because this unlikable, uncharismatic guy making an argument for a concept that's generally an okay and decent concept, it would like undermine that concept in a way. But again, the most important point is, for the love of God, that's not your job, Ted Cruz. And anytime you are lecturing about personal responsibility, that's a moment wasted when you could be talking about legislation that would actually help the people. But he's not in favor of legislation that helps the people at all. Not even close, not even a little bit. So, I mean, think about it, guys. Let's say every politician in America took Jordan Peterson's advice and lectured people about personal responsibility. How insufferable would that be?
Also, shout out to John for the $5. Thanks, man. Peterson is so popular because conservatives fall in line way faster than lefties. And when the lobster king commands, you bend to the claw. That's fucking hilarious. Thank you for the super chat, John. And yeah, I think you're right. Also, I think it's partially just because the right wing likes Peterson because he sounds smart. He sounds like an intellectual. Yet he's still basically satisfying. He's basically telling them what they want to hear. So they can be like, look, this smart sounding person is saying what I want to say. So that therefore it must be true. There's not a ton of intellectuals that are on the right. So they kind of gravitate to the ones that are and really hold them up and be like, look at this guy. I promise, we're not all fucking idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, John.
You got these scumbags ruining the country. And at the same time, they're finger wagging at you and telling you to get your shit together. How about you get your shit together? How about that? Unbelievable. Unbelievable, man. Imagine telling a politician, hey, you need to push the notion of personal responsibility. That would be a total diversion and deflection from the fact that these politicians aren't doing their own jobs well and they're not representing the people. Look, if you want to get into personal responsibility stuff, then go do that. Go be a motivational speaker. Go have your own podcast where you argue for these sorts of narratives all the time. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But you can't be in a position where your job is to represent the community and then you turn around and lecture people about their own individual failings. See, that's the thing, is it personalizes broader systemic problems. And that's not okay. When you pretend like, for example, like poverty is just a choice. You're just lazy. You just don't have any discipline. It's a personal moral failing on your part. That is fundamentally not true. Again, to go back to the original point, minimum wage is not a living wage in this country. You can work full time and not make enough money to survive. Is that their individual fault? Are they just not trying hard enough? Are they not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps enough? It's just not accurate. So, look, I don't know what to tell you guys. These are conversations that we were going to have with Jordan Peterson to his face. He was supposed to come on Crystal Kyle and Friends at the last minute, as you all know. He dropped out, said he has to prepare for his month-long speaking tour. Then, by the way, he went on Joe Rogan after he said, we're not doing any more podcasts. I got to prepare for my tour and rest and everything. So we're going to have these conversations with him to his face, but he had other things in mind. Now, in theory, he's supposed to come on in June or July. We'll see if that happens. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I hope it does, because even though a lot of these intellectual dark web types love to talk about how they're in favor of free discourse and open dialogue and freedom of speech and reasonable disagreements, oftentimes when they have conversations, it's kind of a circle jerk and everybody's agreeing with everybody. Well, there's some reasonable pushback. That would be good for the culture and the broader dialogue. So let's hope it happens, because there's a lot to say. Hey, y'all, do me.
Yeah, I mean, like I was excited to break down the Jordan Peterson, Crystal Kyle and Friends episode. I was hoping that there would have been really good debate. And I'm so curious what it is that Kyle thinks that him and Jordan Peterson agree on so much. So I wanted that to get broken to the public, so that it's just for my own fucking insight. But yeah, doesn't look like it's gonna happen. He's running scared. I will say, talking shit on people who will only go on the Joe Rogan podcast is a little bit of pot calling the kettle black. I don't see Kyle going and making go on Vosh's show and Joe Rogan's show. Okay, really, really getting out there, Kyle. And also people are loving the fact that, Kyle, you hate when you get Jimmy Dore, right? And remember when you just fucking straight up kicked Jimmy Dore off of the fucking Crystal Kyle and Friends and didn't even tell him and replaced him with Hassan Piker? Yeah, that sucks. Comeuppance, Schadenfreude. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. That being said, I still think on the substance, Kyle Kulinski's 100% right in that clip, talking about what a loser Ted Cruz is, and talking about, by extension, kind of what a loser Jordan Peterson is for cozying up. Obviously, the interview is probably not going to happen at this point. And I think that Jordan Peterson is, a total wimp, a total wuss for not actually engaging with people that aren't just, blue-haired college campus lefties seeking to cancel people, but people like Crystal Ball, people like Kyle Kulinski that do represent the populist left in a better light, and that are actually interested in having a good faith exchange, because there are many people on the left that are not just total cringe lords, and it's worth engaging with them for the sake of the public discourse, again, which these people claim to care so much about. Anyway, it's definitely interesting to see Kyle kind of taking some shots, at Jordan Peterson now, after he bailed on their interview. I'm hoping to see more of that from him. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty good clip.
Yeah, good shit. I think that's also the end of the Vanguard for the day. We've been doubling up. If you are still ready for some more Vanguard content, we got a bunch of shit in YouTube folder. You can go watch this originally roast no Miki Cons back in the day, for being some of the OGs opposed to censorship. And also check out our call-in episode. Download that call-in app, subscribe to the Vanguard, and then you can call in, talk shit to us, tell us we're CIA grifters, tell us we're shit lib, Ryan Grim jobbers, whatever the fuck you want to say. I mean, I'm waiting for the people to come in and talk shit. I want it. We've gotten some people who are like, well, maybe Joe Rogan should be censored. And I'm like, well, I don't think so. But we haven't gotten anybody that was like full on, you guys are fucking ops. So I'm waiting for you. Where are you? Call in, app. Be there.
Sorry, guys. I was failing to unmute myself. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in today. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. It does help us beat the algorithm. And subscribe if you're new to the channel. Welcome to anyone that's new tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. And make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next live stream. And also a huge shout out to our patrons. As always, we do start and end our our live streams with a big shout out to our patron community. And that's what this is. So if you want a spot on this board and to find out about our other benefits like access to the Discord community, priority on our monthly Q&As, and all more good stuff, check out the link in the description, guys. Become a Vanguardian, support the show. You know the drill. But yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in today. It was a great show. Have a great rest of your February 1st, first day of the month. Good shit. Peace out, guys.